Babe, listen. I am sending my mother to the shack out in the country, and you and I are keeping the house. My son was chatting on his cell phone with my daughter-in-law while I was polishing the furniture in my new home. I approached him from behind in silence and took away the most precious thing he had. What my daughter-in-law heard after that made her hang up the call that very instant. But let me tell you how I arrived at that moment. How a 64-year-old mother who dedicated her entire life to her son ended up spying on her own betrayal. How unconditional love became the perfect tool for them to rip away everything I had built with my own hands. That morning, I had woken up early as always. My hands were not the same as they were 20 years ago, but they were still capable. They kept cleaning. They kept working. They kept giving. Even though there was not much left to give, I had bought a new cloth and a special polish for the wood. I wanted the living room furniture to shine. This house was my pride, my achievement, the result of 30 years of working in a textile plant where my fingers bled more times than I can remember. Michael had arrived 2 days earlier. He said he was coming to visit me, that he wanted to spend time with me, that Ashley was busy with a project in the city, and he was taking the opportunity to come out to the town. I believed him. I always believed him. I cooked his favorite meal. I cleaned his old room. I put on fresh sheets that smelled of the fabric softener he liked. I bought the coffee brand he loved, even though it seemed way too expensive to me. I spent almost $40 just on things to welcome him properly. He arrived with a smile. He hugged me at the door. He told me the house looked beautiful, that I looked good, that he had missed my cooking. I melted, as always, just like every time my son gave me a crumb of affection. I had dinner with him that night, and we talked about everything and nothing. He asked about my neighbors, about my health, about my routines. I told him everything in great detail because we had not had a conversation like that in months. I thought my son was finally maturing, that he finally valued his mother. How foolish I was. The next morning, he got up late. I had already eaten breakfast and was cleaning the living room. The wooden furniture I had bought with so much effort needed constant care. Each piece of furniture had a story. I bought the coffee table when Michael turned 15. I got the bookshelf when he got into college. The 3-seater sofa was a gift to myself when I finally finished paying off the house. Every penny I spent on this house came from my sweat, from my tired hands, from my swollen knees, after so many years standing in the factory. Michael came out of his room around 10 unders in the morning. He had his cell phone in his hand as always. That thing seemed to be welded to his palm. He greeted me with a quick kiss on the forehead and poured himself some coffee. I kept cleaning. I did not want to bother him. I did not want him to think his mother was a nagging old woman who would not leave him alone. Then his phone rang. Ashley. I saw the name on the screen before he answered. My daughter-in-law, the woman who married my son 6 years ago, and who since then seemed to have a personal mission to distance me from him. But I never said anything. I never complained. A good mother does not meddle in her son's marriage. A good mother stays quiet and hopes they include her. Michael answered and walked toward the hallway. I kept cleaning the coffee table. I moved the cloth in soft circles, trying not to make noise. I wanted the wood to shine. I wanted everything to be perfect. Then I heard his voice. He was not speaking softly. He was not whispering. He was speaking normally because he thought I was not paying attention, because to him, I was just part of the furniture. Babe, listen. I am sending my mother to the shack out in the country, and you and I are keeping the house. The cloth fell from my hand. My entire body froze. I thought I had heard wrong, that my old ears were deceiving me, but then he kept talking, and every word was worse than the last. I already spoke to the owner of the property. It is a run-down trailer with 2 small rooms, but it is enough for her. It is only 20 minutes from town, so she will not be that isolated. I told him it is temporary while we fix some things here at the house, but you and I know she is not coming back. This house is ours now. My legs trembled. I had to lean against the wall so I would not fall to the floor. Michael was standing in front of the hallway window, completely oblivious to my presence. He continued talking with that relaxed and casual voice, as if he were planning a vacation and not the exile of his own mother. She is not going to refuse. You know how she is. She always says yes to everything. Besides, I am going to tell her that the country air is better for her health, that living out there will do her good, that here in the house, there are too many stairs, and at her age, she could fall. She is going to swallow the whole story. She always does. Ashley said something on the other end of the line. I could not hear what, but Michael's answer was clear. No, we are not going to pay her rent. She did enough for me her whole life. Now it is my turn to decide what is best for her. Besides, this house is technically mine too. I grew up here. I have a right. I felt something break inside my chest. It was not my heart. It was something deeper. It was the image I had of my son. It was the illusion that all my sacrifice had been worth it. It was the hope that at the end of the road, my son would love me the way I loved him. I stood there against the wall, feeling how 30 years of work turned into nothing. Like every overtime hour I worked at the plant. Like every meal I skipped so he could eat better. Like every dollar I saved denying myself treats so he could study. Everything evaporated in that hallway while my son planned to steal the only thing that truly belonged to me. Then something changed in me. It was subtle. It was silent, but it was real. My hands stopped shaking. My breathing slowed down. My mind cleared with a coldness I had never felt before. I took my cell phone out of my apron pocket. I opened the voice recorder app. I pressed the red button and I started walking toward him. My steps were silent. The hallway carpet muffled any sound. Michael kept talking, oblivious to everything. Oblivious that his mother was less than 6 feet away, documenting every word of his betrayal. The trailer costs $400 a month. It is cheap, but do not worry. She has her Social Security check. Let her pay her own rent. We need that money to remodel the kitchen. You always wanted a modern kitchen, and this house has good space. We are going to knock down that wall and put an island in the center. It is going to look gorgeous. I got closer. I was right behind him now. So close I could see the screen of his cell phone. So close I could hear Ashley breathing on the other side. My hand held my phone up high, recording every second, every word, every betrayal. Mom is not going to complain. She never does. She is too nice, too submissive. She has always been like that. That is why it is so easy. Tomorrow, I will tell her I found a perfect place for her, and that is it. In a week, she will be installed over there, and we will be here. Then I took one more step. My shadow fell over him. Michael turned around. Our eyes met. He saw my face. He saw my phone held high. He saw the screen with the recording counter running. And in that exact moment, he understood what he had just lost. It was not the house. It was not the money. It was not the plan. It was the proof. Mom, he whispered with a cracking voice. On the other end of the line, Ashley kept talking. She was saying something about new curtains, about modern furniture, about how they were going to change everything. But then she must have heard Michael's silence. She must have felt that something was wrong. Michael, what is wrong? Why aren't you talking? My son could not speak. He looked at me with eyes wide as saucers with terror painted on his face with guilt, oozing from every pore of his skin. I held my phone higher. I made sure he could see the screen clearly, that he understood that every second of the last 5 minutes was recorded, saved, protected. Michael, What is happening?" Ashley's voice sounded hysterical now. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I brought my mouth close to my son's phone, and I spoke directly into the receiver. My voice came out clear, firm, without any trembling. "Hello, Ashley. It is me, Linda, your mother-in-law, the one you were going to send to the shack, the owner of this house." There was a silence, then a stifled scream, then the unmistakable sound of a call being cut off. My son dropped the phone. It fell onto the carpet with a dull thud. He stood there looking at me as if he were seeing a ghost, as if his submissive and obedient mother had just turned into something he could not recognize. I stopped the recording. I put my phone in my pocket, and then I spoke with a calmness that surprised even myself. "You have 2 hours to get out of my house, Michael. 2 hours to pack your things and get out. And if you ever try to take what is mine, this recording is going to reach everyone. Your job, your friends, every person who believes you are a good son." He tried to speak, but I raised a hand. The gesture silenced him immediately. "I do not want to hear you. I do not want your excuses. I do not want your tears. I just want you to leave." I turned around and walked back to the living room. I picked up my cloth from the floor and I kept cleaning my furniture as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. And I had just recovered something I had lost a long time ago, my dignity. But to understand how I arrived at that moment of absolute clarity, I need to take you back in time. I need to show you who I was before I became the woman who held that phone recording, the betrayal of her own son. I need you to understand why that instant was so devastating and so liberating at the same time. I was born in a small town where women learned from childhood that their value lay in serving and caretaking and shutting up. My mother cleaned other people's houses, and my father worked in the fields. We were poor, but dignified, or that is what they told us. Dignity was the only thing we had when we did not have enough to eat 3 times a day. I met Michael's father when I was 19. He was 5 years older than me and worked in construction. He had large, rough hands and easy smile. He promised me a house, a family, a better life than the one I had as a child. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because at 19, one believes that love is enough to build a future. We got married 6 months later. The wedding was simple. A borrowed dress, a small cake, 20 guests in the backyard of my parents' house. But I was happy. I thought my life was finally going to begin, that I was going to have my own home, my own children, my own story. Michael was born a year later. It was a difficult birth. I was in labor for 16 hours. I thought I was going to die. But when I saw him for the first time with his eyes closed and his fists clenched, I knew I would do anything for him. Anything. That was my first mistake. Promising anything without limits. The first few years were hard. My husband worked all day and came home tired. I stayed home with Michael. I nursed him. I took care of him. I washed his clothes by hand because we did not have a washing machine. I cooked with the little we had. Sometimes there was only macaroni and cheese or canned soup. Sometimes not even that. But I always made sure Michael ate even if I went to sleep on an empty stomach. When Michael turned 3, my husband left. There was no argument. There was no goodbye. He simply went out to work one day and never came back. He left a note on the kitchen table. It said he had met someone else, that he needed a fresh start, that he was sorry. 4 lines. That was all 5 years of marriage were worth. I sat in that kitchen with the note in my hand while Michael played on the floor with some wooden blocks. I wondered how I was going to survive, how I was going to feed my son, how I was going to pay the rent. I had no job. I had no family nearby who could help me. I had nothing except a 3-year-old boy who depended completely on me. That night, I did not sleep. I stayed awake doing the math in an old notebook, calculating how much I needed, how much I had, how much I was missing. The numbers did not add up. They never added up. But the next morning, I got up anyway. I bathed Michael. I gave him the last bowl of cereal left in the house. And I went out to look for work. I knocked on doors for 2 weeks. Diners, stores, offices. Everyone told me the same thing. We have no openings. Come back next week. Leave your number. They never called. I was starting to get desperate. The money my husband had left was running out. The rent was due in 10 days. The refrigerator was almost empty. Then I found the textile plant. It was on the outskirts of town, a big gray building with dirty windows. They needed operators. They did not ask for experience, just hands that worked and a willingness to work 10 hours a day. The pay was $6 an hour back then. It was not much, but it was something. I started working the next day. I left Michael with a neighbor who babysat for a few dollars a day. I left the house at 6:00 in the morning and came back at 7 at night. I arrived with swollen fingers and an aching back, but I arrived with money with the possibility of eating with the hope that maybe we could get ahead. The years passed like that. Work home, Michael. Work home, Michael. My life became a mechanical routine where there was no room for anything else. I did not go out with friends because I did not have time. I did not meet men because I did not have energy. I did not have hobbies because I did not have money. Everything I earned went directly to basic needs. Rent, food, clothes for Michael, who grew so fast that his pants were too short every 6 months. But I was happy. Or that is what I told myself, because I had Michael. Because he was a good boy. He got good grades. He helped me around the house. He told me he loved me. Every night before sleeping, he hugged me and whispered, "Thanks, Mom." Those 2 words made it all worth it. When Michael turned 12, he started to change. He started noticing what other kids had and he did not. Brand name sneakers, video games, new bicycles. He asked me for things I could not give him. I tried to explain. I told him money was tight, that we had to prioritize, that there were things more important than expensive sneakers. He understood, or so it seemed. But something in his look changed. He started seeing me differently, as if I were responsible for his life not being like his friends' lives. As if working 10 hours in a factory was not enough sacrifice. As if everything I did not matter. Because at the end of the day, he was still the kid without the cool shoes. Even so, I kept working. I kept saving. When Michael turned 15, I bought him that coffee table that was in my living room today. It cost $200. I saved for 6 months to buy it. When I brought it home, Michael barely looked at it. He said, "Thanks," and went to his room. I stood there looking at that table, wondering if one day he would understand what it meant, what it cost, what it represented. The high school years were difficult. Michael wanted to go to college. He wanted to study business administration. He wanted to be someone important. I supported his dream, but the numbers did not add up. College was expensive. Textbooks were expensive. Transportation was expensive. Everything was expensive. And I was still earning barely above minimum wage in that gray factory. But I got a second job. I cleaned offices on weekends, 4 hours every Saturday and Sunday for a little extra cash. It was exhausting. My knees started to hurt. My back cracked every time I got up. But Michael was going to go to college. He was going to have a better life than mine. He was going to be someone. For 4 years, I paid for his education, tuition, books, gas money, meals. Everything came out of my 2 jobs. I lived on the minimum. I bought the cheapest clothes. I ate leftovers. I did not go to the doctor even if something hurt, because every dollar counted. Every dollar was for Michael, for his future, so that he would not have to work in a factory like his mother. He graduated with honors. I was in the front row the day of his ceremony. I wore a dress I had bought at a thrift store. It had cost me $8, but I had washed and ironed it with such care that it looked new. When they called his name, and he went up on stage to receive his diploma, I cried. I cried with pride, with happiness, with relief because he had done it, because my son was a professional, because all the sacrifice had been worth it. After the ceremony, Michael hugged me. He said, "Thank you, Mom." He told me none of this would have been possible without me. He promised he was going to take care of me when he got a job, that he was going to pay back everything I had done for him. I believed him. I always believed him. He got a job 6 months later, a company in the city. He started earning a good salary, something like $3,000 a month to start. It was not a fortune, but it was more than I had earned in my entire life. He moved into a small apartment near his office. I stayed in our rented house, continuing with my 2 jobs, because even though Michael was working, I still needed to pay for my own life. At first, he came to visit me every 2 weeks. He brought food. He gave me some money, $50, $100. I saved them, even though I did not need them for urgent expenses. I kept them as proof that my son loved me, that he remembered me, that he had not forgotten me. But the visits became spaced out. Every 2 weeks turned into once a month, then every 2 months, then only on Christmas and my birthday. He said work kept him busy, that he had a lot of responsibilities, that he was building his career. I understood, or I tried to understand, because that was what good mothers did. Understand, wait, do not complain. He met Ashley when he was 28. She worked at the same company. She was pretty well dressed, from a family with money. Michael was in love. He introduced me to her at an uncomfortable lunch where she barely spoke to me. She asked what I did for a living. I told her I worked in a factory. She smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was a smile that said, "Poor woman," without saying it out loud. They got married a year later. The wedding was big, elegant, in a hall with crystal chandeliers. I did not pay for anything. Ashley's family took care of everything. I only went as a guest. I sat at a table in the back. I wore a new dress that had cost me $60. It was the most expensive dress I had bought in my life. But next to the other guests, I seemed out of place. After the wedding, Michael changed even more. He was no longer just my son, busy with his career. He was Ashley's husband. And Ashley had very specific plans about how their life should be. Plans that did not include me. The visits became almost non-existent, maybe 3 times a year. And when he came, he always brought Ashley. She sat in my small living room looking at everything with that expression of someone who is evaluating. She touched my old furniture. She commented on how outdated the decor was. She suggested I should modernize, that I should change this or that, but she never offered help. Only criticism wrapped in false concern. I kept working at the plant. My hands were no longer the same. Arthritis had begun to settle in my fingers. Every movement hurt. Every shift was a battle against my own body. But I could not stop working. I needed the money. I needed to feel useful. I needed to have something that was mine, even if it was just a paycheck every 2 weeks. It was around that time that I started dreaming of something more, of having my own house. Not a rented house where the landlord could raise the rent whenever he wanted. Not a place where I lived with the constant fear of being evicted. I wanted something that was truly mine. A place where no one could kick me out, where I could die in peace, knowing I had a piece of land with my name on it. I spoke to the bank. They told me that with my salary and credit, I could qualify for a small loan. I found a modest house on the outskirts of town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, but it had a small garden and good light in the mornings. It cost $80,000. It was old and needed repairs, but it was perfect for me. I applied for the loan. They approved it on the condition that I give a down payment of $10,000. I had saved $8,000, money I had kept for years, in a tin under my bed. I needed $2,000 more. I asked Michael for help. It was the first time in years I asked him for anything. I explained that I had found a house, that I needed a little help for the down payment, that it was an investment in my future and my security. He listened in silence. Then he said he would talk to Ashley. 2 weeks passed. Finally, he called me. His voice sounded tense, uncomfortable. He told me he was very sorry, but they could not help me. That they had just bought a new car that they were saving to remodel their apartment, that maybe in a few months. I told him there was no problem, that I understood that he should not worry. I hung up the phone and cried. I did not cry for the money. I cried because my son, who had studied with my money, who had eaten with my money, who had had everything thanks to my work, could not give me $2,000. Not because he didn't have it, but because he didn't want to. I got the money another way. I sold the few pieces of jewelry. I had a ring that had been my mother's, some gold earrings I'd been given at my wedding, a small chain. Altogether, it gave me $200. I borrowed the rest from a co-worker at the factory. I promised to pay her back in 6 months. She accepted because she knew I was a woman of my word. I bought the house. I signed the papers with trembling hands. When they gave me the keys, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Freedom, security, pride. This house was mine. I had bought it with my own effort. No one had given it to me. No one could take it from me. I told Michael. I thought he would be happy for me, that he would come to see my new house, that maybe he would even help me move. He said, "That's great." Just that. "That's great, Mom." And then he changed the subject. I moved alone. A neighbor helped me with the boxes. I hired a kid from town to move the heavier furniture. I paid him $50. Michael did not come. He said he had work, that he was sorry, that he would come visit me soon. Months passed before he came. When he finally appeared, he brought Ashley. They toured the house in 10 minutes. Ashley made comments about how small it was, about how old, about how much work it needed. Michael nodded to everything she said as if he had no opinion of his own. I prepared a special meal that day. I spent $40 on ingredients. I made Michael's favorite dish. I set the table with care. I used the good plates I had bought on sale. I wanted them to see that even though my house was small, it was dignified. It was cozy. It was mine. They ate quickly. Michael checked his cell phone between bites. Ashley barely touched the food. She said she was watching her figure, that she had read that heavy meals were not healthy. I nodded and kept eating in silence, while my stomach closed up with every word of contempt disguised as health concern. They left after lunch. They said they had plans in the city, that they had come only because they were passing nearby. I said goodbye at the door with a smile that hurt the muscles of my face. I told them to come back soon, that they would always be welcome. Michael gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Ashley waved from the car. I watched them drive away, and something inside me dimmed a little more. But I kept trying. I kept calling. I kept sending text messages. I kept asking how they were. I kept being the persistent mother who did not want to accept that her son had drifted away, not because of circumstances, but by choice. In the following years, things got worse. Michael almost never answered my calls. When he did, the conversation lasted 3 minutes. He was always in a hurry. He was always busy. There was always something more important than talking to his mother. Ashley started making more direct comments. Once she told me I should think about selling my house and going to a nursing home, that at my age, it was dangerous to live alone, that if something happened to me, no one would know. She said it with a tone of concern, but I saw the truth in her eyes. She wanted me to disappear, to cease existing in Michael's life, to erase myself, so they could move on without the burden of an old, poor mother. I said nothing. I just smiled and changed the subject. But that night, I did not sleep. I stayed awake thinking about how I had reached this point, how the woman who had sacrificed everything for her son was now seen as a nuisance, as something to be gotten rid of. Months passed, and I kept working at the plant even though my body begged me to stop. I kept paying my mortgage. I kept keeping my house clean and tidy. I kept living with the hope that someday Michael would remember who I was, who I had always been, the woman who loved him before he even existed. Then 3 months ago, Michael called me. It was strange because he never called. He always waited for me to do it first. He told me he had been thinking about me a lot, that he felt bad for neglecting me, that he wanted to spend more time with me. He asked if he could come visit me, stay a few days, reconnect. I said yes immediately. My heart leaped with joy. I thought my son was finally coming back, that finally he had missed me, that finally everything was going to get better. I prepared for his arrival with such care. I cleaned the house from top to bottom. I bought new sheets. I filled the fridge with his favorite things. I spent almost $200 on that preparation, but I didn't care. My son was coming. My son wanted to be with me. He arrived 2 days ago, smiling, affectionate. We talked for hours. We ate dinner together. We watched TV. For the first time in years, I felt I had my son back, that everything had been worth it, that finally he was seeing everything I had done for him. How blind I was, how foolish, how naive. Because while I was polishing the furniture this morning, believing my son finally valued me, he was in the hallway planning how to steal my house, my only asset, the only thing that truly belonged to me. And that was when I heard it, when that bubble of happiness exploded, when reality hit me with a force that almost knocked me to the ground. Babe, listen, I am sending my mother to the shack and you and I are keeping the house. Everything made sense. The unexpected visit, the sudden affection, the questions about my routines. Everything had been a strategy, a way to evaluate, to plan, to betray. There I was standing in my own living room in the house I had bought, with the sweat of 30 years, listening to my son plan to exile me, as if I were an old object that was no longer useful, as if the 64 years of my life had no value, as if everything I had done for him could be erased with a simple decision made without consulting me. My hand held the cleaning cloth, that cloth that had cost $3 and that I had bought with such excitement because I wanted my house to shine for my son. What irony! I was cleaning for him while he was planning to kick me out. Michael kept talking. His voice came clearly from the hallway. He was not whispering. He was not lowering his tone. He spoke with total tranquility because it never occurred to him that I might be listening, because for him I was invisible, harmless, incapable of defending myself. The trailer is perfect for her. It is far away, but not that far. It has the basics: 2 small rooms, kitchen, bathroom. It is all she needs at her age. Attends, she can't maintain such a big house anyway. She struggles with the stairs. She struggles to clean. It is for her own good, for my own good. Those words went through me like knives. He was justifying my exile as an act of love, as if stealing my house were doing me a favor, as if sending me to live alone in a dilapidated trailer, far from town where I had lived my whole life, was taking care of me. Ashley said something I couldn't quite hear, but Michael's answer was perfectly clear. No, she won't suspect anything. I am going to tell her I got the place especially for her, that it is a quiet place where she will be better off, that here in town there is too much noise, too much pollution, that over there she will breathe fresh air. She will believe me. She always believes me. She always believes me. He was right. I had always believed everything. Every excuse, every broken promise, every lie wrapped in smiles. I had swallowed it all because I wanted to believe my son was good, that he loved me, that someday he would give back even a fraction of everything I had given him. I already spoke to Mr. Christensen, the owner of the property. I told him my mom needed a quiet place for health reasons. He gave me a good price, $600 a month. She can pay it with her Social Security. She gets like $500 a month so she can afford it. We don't have to spend anything on her. $500. That was my check after 30 years in the factory, $1,500. That barely covered food, utilities, medicine, and Michael had calculated exactly how much he could take from me without me starving to death. He had done the math. He had planned every last detail of my impoverishment. I felt my legs start to shake. I leaned against the coffee table. That table I had bought when Michael turned 15. That table that cost 6 months of savings. That table he had barely looked at when I brought it home. Now that table was going to be Ashley's. She was going to put her fashion magazines on it. She was going to rest her expensive wine glasses on it. She was going to enjoy something I had paid for with my pain. And this house is perfect for us. It has good size, good location. We can remodel it completely. Knock down that kitchen wall. Make the whole space open concept. Change the floors, modernize the bathrooms. It is going to look gorgeous. And the best part is we won't pay rent. We are going to save like $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month. That was what my house was worth to them. Not the sacrifice it cost to buy it. Not the sleepless nights worrying about payments. Not the pride of having something of my own. Just $3,000 saved. Just an economic convenience. Ashley spoke again. This time I could hear part of what she was saying. Her voice sounded excited, almost childish. "Oh, babe, I can't wait. I'm already seeing the new furniture. I want a modern living room, all white with gold accents and a kitchen with an island. I have always wanted a kitchen like that. Your mom has good taste for nothing. Everything here is so old, so ugly." Michael laughed. He laughed at his wife's comments about my house, about my furniture, about my taste. He didn't defend it. He didn't defend me. He just laughed as if it were all a joke, as if I were a joke. "I know, babe. That is why we are going to change everything. Nothing old will remain. We are going to make this house our home, a real home. Modern, elegant, like we deserve. Like they deserved. They deserved my house. I didn't. I who had paid for it. I who had maintained it. I who had worked until my hands bled to be able to buy it. I didn't deserve to live in it. But they did. My eyes filled with tears. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of a fury that had been asleep for decades and was now waking up with a violence that frightened me. And the best part is that legally she can't do anything. The house is in her name. Yes, but I am her only son. I am her direct heir. Besides, if she objects, I just have to get a medical certificate saying she can no longer live alone, that she needs care, that she represents a danger to herself. With that, I can make decisions for her. I already consulted a lawyer. He had already consulted a lawyer. He hadn't just planned to rob me. He had looked for legal ways to do it. He had investigated how to take away my autonomy, how to declare me incompetent, how to turn me into an old woman without rights over her own life. Something broke inside me in that moment. It wasn't my heart. My heart had already been broken 1,000 times before. It was something deeper. It was the image I had of myself, the image of the self-sacrificing mother who forgives everything, the image of the woman who endures in silence, the image of the victim who accepts her fate without fighting. That woman died right there in that instant, while listening to my son plan my destruction with the same ease one plans a vacation. And in her place, something new was born. Something cold, something calculating, something I didn't know existed inside me. I dropped the cloth. The sound was soft, but in my mind, it sounded like thunder. I took my cell phone out of my apron pocket. My hands were no longer shaking. My fingers moved with precision. I opened the recorder app, the same app I had downloaded months ago. When a coworker taught me how to use it to record the supervisor's instructions, I pressed the red button. The counter started running. 0 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Every second was a word of betrayal being documented. Every second was proof. Every second was my salvation. I started walking toward the hallway. My steps were silent on the carpet. That carpet I had bought on sale for $80. That carpet I had vacuumed 1,000 times. That carpet that now muffled the sound of my revenge. Michael didn't hear me approaching. He kept talking with total tranquility, with total confidence, with total contempt. Mom has never been one to complain. She is one of those old-fashioned women, submissive, obedient, always putting others first. She is never going to confront me. She is never going to tell me no. She is too nice, too dumb, too dumb. My son thought I was dumb. The son I fed when I had nothing. The son for whom I worked until I broke my body. The son for whom I paid a college education while I continued wearing secondhand clothes. That son thought his mother was dumb. Maybe I was. Maybe I had been all my life. But not anymore. I got closer. I was 3 FT'd away now. I could see the back of his head. I could see how he moved his free hand while he talked. I could see his relaxed posture. The posture of someone who has no idea of the danger approaching. Besides, when she moves to the trailer, she will be so isolated. She won't even be able to complain to anyone. She has no close friends. She has no family. She only has me, and I am going to visit her from time to time so she doesn't suspect. I am going to bring her some things. I am going to tell her I love her, and she is going to be happy, because at least her son visits her. At least her son visits her. That was all he thought I needed. Crumbs of affection, occasional visits, lies wrapped in fake smiles. And I should be grateful. I should be happy that my son didn't forget me completely. I took another step. Now I was right behind him. My shadow touched his back. My phone recorded every word. My heart beat with a calmness I had never felt. And then I did it. What I never thought I would be capable of doing. What would change everything forever? I took one last step. My shadow fell completely over him. Michael must have felt something because his body tensed slightly, but he kept talking. He kept sealing his own doom with every word. The only thing that worries me is that the trailer is very neglected. But oh well, she won't complain. As long as she has a roof over her head, she will accept anything. And if she gets sick or something, well, that's a pity. But we did what we could. No one can tell us we are bad children. Bad children. He was worried about what people would say. Not about me, not about my well-being, only about his image, only about maintaining the facade of a good son, while sending me to die slowly in an abandoned shack. Michael turned around. Our eyes met, and that was when I saw it. I saw the exact moment his brain processed the scene. His mother standing behind him. His mother with the phone held high. His mother with the screen clearly showing the red recording symbol. The counter marking 3 minutes and 40 seconds. 3 minutes and 40 seconds of documented betrayal. 3 minutes and 40 seconds of evidence. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That had just changed everything. The color left his face. His eyes opened so wide I could see the white around his pupils. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The phone almost fell from his hand. On the other end of the line, Ashley kept talking. Her voice sounded cheerful, excited, planning the decoration of my house as if it were already hers. Michael, are you listening to me? I say we should change the windows too. These are very old. And paint everything white. White makes spaces look bigger and more modern. Michael couldn't speak. He looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost, as if the submissive and dumb woman he knew had just transformed into something he couldn't comprehend, into something dangerous. I held the phone higher. I wanted him to see it well. I wanted him to understand that there was no way to deny what he had said. There was no way to manipulate the situation. There was no way to turn me into the crazy woman who misunderstood everything, because I had proof. I had his voice. I had his exact words. Michael, hello. Why aren't you answering me? Ashley's voice sounded confused now, slightly irritated, probably thinking her husband had been distracted by something unimportant, not knowing that that unimportant something was her mother-in-law destroying all her plans. With a simple record button, Michael tried to speak. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again. But the words didn't come out. He was in shock, in panic, in that state of pure terror that comes when you realize you just lost something very important. I moved closer. So close I could hear his rapid breathing. So close I could see a drop of sweat starting to form on his forehead. And then I spoke. My voice came out low, calm, firm. Hello, Ashley. There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, dense silence. Then her voice, no longer cheerful, no longer excited now. Tense, sharp, scared. Linda, yes, Ashley. It is me, your mother-in-law, the one you were going to send to the trailer, the owner of this house, the dummy who always swallows everything. I heard her inhale sharply. I heard the sound of something falling on the other side. Maybe her phone, maybe her coffee cup, maybe her dignity. Linda, Michael, what is happening? But Michael couldn't answer her. He kept looking at me with those eyes full of terror, with guilt oozing from every pore of his skin, with the absolute certainty that he had made the worst mistake of his life. What is happening, Ashley? It is that I just recorded every word of your conversation, every plan, every lie, every detail of how you intended to steal my house. No, wait. That is not it. We didn't. Ashley tried to backpedal. She tried to deny, but it was too late. Too late. The words had been spoken. The truth had been revealed. And I had the proof. Then I did something I never thought I would do. Something the Linda of a week ago would have considered impossible. Something the submissive and obedient mother would never have had the courage to do. I brought my mouth close to Michael's phone, and I spoke directly into the receiver, my voice clear, firm, without the slightest tremor. Listen to me well, Ashley. This house is mine. I bought it with my money, with my work, with my sweat. And no one, absolutely no one, is going to take it from me, much less an ungrateful son and his ambitious wife. Linda, please let me explain. There is nothing to explain. I heard everything. $600 rent, the medical certificate to declare me incompetent. The new furniture, the modern kitchen, the white decoration with gold accents, everything. There was silence. Then I heard something that filled me with a dark satisfaction. I heard Ashley start to cry. They were not tears of regret. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of knowing they had lost. This isn't going to stay like this. Michael, do something. Tell your mother that. But she couldn't finish because in that moment I stopped the recording. I put my phone in my pocket and I looked my son directly in the eyes. You have 2 hours to get out of my house, Michael. Mom, 2 hours. And if you ever try to take what is mine, this recording is going to reach everyone. Your job, your friends, every person who believes you are a good son. Every person who thinks I am the one who abandoned you. But Mom, listen to me. I raised a hand. The gesture silenced him immediately. It was strange. All my life I had listened. I had obeyed. I had accepted. And now, with a simple movement of my hand, I could make my son shut up. I could take control. I could have power. I do not want to hear you. I do not want your excuses. I do not want your tears. I do not want anything from you except for you to leave my house and never come back. Michael dropped his phone. It fell onto the carpet with a dull thud. On the other end, Ashley's voice could still be heard screaming his name, but he was no longer paying attention to her. He was looking at me, only at me, with a mixture of fear, surprise, and something I took a moment to identify: respect. For the first time in decades, my son was looking at me with respect. He tried to approach. He tried to touch my arm. I took a step back. Do not touch me. You have no right. Mom, please. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean what didn't mean for me to find out. Didn't mean for me to discover you. Didn't mean to lose the free house you planned to steal from your mother. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out because there was nothing to say. There was no valid excuse. There was no possible justification, only the naked and cruel truth of his betrayal. I turned around. I walked back to the living room. I picked up my cloth from the floor and I started cleaning the coffee table again, as if nothing had happened. As if my world hadn't just changed completely. As if I hadn't just recovered something I had lost so long ago. I didn't even remember what it felt like. My dignity. Behind me, I heard Michael picking up his phone. I heard Ashley still screaming on the other end. I heard him trying to calm her down, to explain to her to minimize the damage, but the damage was already done and there was no way to undo it. I wiped the cloth over the wood in soft circles. The table started to shine, and while it shone, I thought about everything that had happened, about all the years of sacrifice, about all the times I swallowed my pain, about all the occasions I accepted being less so that my son could be more. And I thought about how foolish I had been, not foolish for loving, not foolish for sacrificing, foolish for believing that limitless sacrifice was love. Foolish for thinking that giving everything meant I would receive something in return. Foolish for confusing being a good mother with being a voiceless mother. I heard steps in the hallway. Michael was walking toward his room, probably to pack, probably processing what had just happened, probably calling Ashley again to plan his next move. But I was no longer afraid because I had the power now. I had the evidence. I had control. And above all, I had the absolute certainty that I would never again allow anyone to treat me as if I were worth nothing, not even my own son. I finished cleaning the table. It looked beautiful. The wood shone under the morning light. I sat on the sofa and looked around. My house. My small house with its old furniture and its outdated decor and its kitchen that needed remodeling, but it was mine. All mine. And it was going to stay that way. The 2 hours passed in a heavy silence. I stayed in the living room. I didn't move a muscle. I just sat on my sofa listening to the sounds coming from Michael's room. The opening and closing of drawers, the dragging of a suitcase, the sound of the zipper. Every noise was a small victory. Every movement was confirmation that I had finally taken control of my own life. My phone vibrated several times, messages from an unknown number. I didn't need to open them to know they were from Ashley, probably insulting me, probably threatening me, probably trying to manipulate me with poisoned words. I ignored them all. I blocked the number, and I kept sitting on my sofa waiting. When Michael finally came out of the room, he was carrying a large suitcase. His eyes were red. I don't know if he had cried or if he was just tired from the adrenaline and shock. I didn't care. I no longer cared about his pain, not after he had planned mine with such coldness. He stopped at the entrance to the living room. He looked at me. He opened his mouth as if he were going to say something, but I looked him directly in the eyes and shook my head. A single movement, firm, final. He understood. He closed his mouth. He looked down and he walked toward the front door. Before leaving, he stopped. His hand on the door knobbed his back to me. His voice came out low. Broken. I'm sorry, Mom. 3 words. 3 words that arrived 30 years late. 3 words that no longer meant anything because actions had screamed much louder than any apology. I didn't answer. I just waited for him to open the door, for him to leave, for the sound of his steps to fade down the driveway, for the engine of his car to start for the noise to get lost in the distance. And when finally silence filled my house again, I let out the air. I didn't know I had been holding my shoulders relaxed. My hands stopped gripping the edge of the sofa. My eyes closed, but I didn't cry. There were no more tears. There was only a cold and absolute clarity about what I needed to do now. I got up. I went to my room. I searched in the back of my closet for an old box where I kept important documents, the deed to the house payment receipts, bank papers, everything that proved this house was mine and only mine. I reviewed every paper. I made sure everything was in order, that there was nothing Michael could use against me. Then I looked in my contact list for a number I hadn't called in months. Susan Miller, a neighbor who lived 3 streets down. We'd become friends years ago when we both worked night shifts. She cleaned offices like me, but then she had studied and now worked at a law firm as a paralegal. She wasn't a lawyer, but she knew the law. She knew about rights. She knew how the system worked. I dialed her number. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Linda? What a surprise. How are you?" Her voice sounded warm, genuine. It was strange to hear warmth after hours of coldness and betrayal. "Susan, I need your help. It is urgent." There was a pause. Then her tone changed. It became serious, professional. What happened, I told her everything from the beginning to the end. The conversation I heard, the recording I made, the 2 hours I gave Michael to leave everything. While I spoke, my voice remained firm. I didn't break. I didn't hesitate. I just recounted the facts as they were. Susan listened in silence. When I finished, there was a moment of stillness, then a long sigh. "Linda, you did exactly the right thing." Those words, those 6 simple words, gave me more validation than 30 years of trying to be a good mother. Is the recording legal? Can I use it? Yes. In this state, it is legal to record a conversation if you are part of it or if you are on your own property. You are in your house. It is completely valid. And with what you tell me, Michael said, you have clear proof of intent to defraud and abuse an elderly person. I felt something heavy lift from my chest. I was right. I had proof. I had rights. What do I need to do now? First, save that recording in several places. Email it to yourself. Upload it to a cloud. Save it on a USB drive. It cannot disappear under any circumstances. I will do it today. Second, you need to change the locks on your house. Today, now, not tomorrow. Michael has keys. And even though he left, we don't know if he will try to come back. You are right. I am going to call a locksmith. Third, and this is important, Linda, you need to make a clear will specifying that Michael inherits nothing. And you need to document everything that happened today. Write it down with dates, with times, with details. If this goes to anything legal, we need a record of everything. My hand shook for the first time in hours, not from fear, from the magnitude of what I was doing, from the finality of every step, from how I was closing doors I never thought I would close. Susan, he is my only son. I know Linda, but a son who tries to steal your house and send you to a shack to keep your assets is not a son. He is an abuser. And you owe him nothing. You already gave him everything your entire life, and he paid you with betrayal. She was right. I knew she was right. But decades of being a mother were not erased with a phone conversation. They were not erased even with a betrayal. The instinct to protect him was still there, small whispering. But there, I know it is hard. But think about this. If you hadn't realized today, in a week, you would be in that shack alone paying rent with your pitiful pension check while he lives in your house, changing your furniture, erasing your existence. Is that what you want? No, the word came out firm, clear, definitive. No, that is not what I want. I don't deserve it. Exactly. You don't deserve it. You deserve to live in your house. The house you bought with your work. The house that is yours. and you deserve to live without fear of someone taking it from you. I took a deep breath. Susan was right about everything. I needed to act. I needed to protect myself. I needed to make sure this never happened again. I am going to do everything you told me, everything good. And Linda, one more thing. Do not answer calls from Michael or Ashley. No matter what they tell you, no matter how they manipulate you, do not answer. If they need to tell you something, let them do it through a lawyer. You need distance. You need protection. Okay, I won't answer. Tomorrow I will stop by your house. We will review all your documents, and if you need, I will accompany you to make the will and any other legal matter. You are not alone in this. Thank you. Susan, don't thank me. That's what friends are for. And Linda listened to me. Well, I am proud of you. What you did today, recording that conversation, defending your house, that takes courage. A lot of courage. I hung up the phone and sat on the edge of my bed. Susan's words resonated in my head. I am proud of you. When was the last time someone told me that? When was the last time I myself had been proud of me? I couldn't remember. I got up. I looked in my old notebook for the number of a locksmith I had used years ago when I lost my keys. I dialed. An older man answered. Palacios Locksmith. I need to change all the locks on my house today if possible. Today, let me check. Yes, I can be there in 2 hours. Are there 3 locks? 4. Front door, back door, garden door, and the garage door. Okay, it is $200 for the whole job. Includes new high-quality locks. Perfect. I will wait for you here. I gave him my address. He confirmed he would arrive around 4 in the afternoon. I hung up and looked at the clock. It was 2:00. I had 2 hours to do everything Susan had told me. I opened my old computer, the one I had bought used years ago, and barely knew how to use. I went to my email. It took me 3 tries to remember the password. Finally, I got in. I connected my phone to the computer with an old cable I found in a drawer. It took me 20 minutes to figure out how to transfer the recording. But finally, I managed. I emailed it to myself. Then I saved it in a folder on the computer. Then I copied it to an old USB drive I found in the same drawer. 3 copies in 3 different places, as Susan had said. Then I opened a new document and I started writing. Date time. Everything that had happened, every word of the conversation, I remembered every detail of the confrontation, every moment from when I heard Michael's voice until he walked out the door. I wrote for an hour. My fingers hurt. My back hurt. But I kept writing because this was important. Because this was my protection. Because this was my documented truth. When I finished, I saved the document. I printed it. I put the printed sheet together with my other important documents, and I breathed. The doorbell rang. It was 4 neuro sharp. The locksmith was punctual. I opened the door. It was a man of about 70. White hair, strong hands, kind look. Good afternoon, ma'am. I am here to change the locks. Come in, please. He entered with his toolbox. He started with the front door. I sat in the living room and watched him work. There was something therapeutic about watching how he removed the old lock, how he installed the new one, how he handed me the new keys, 2 keys for each lock, 8 keys in total. It took almost 2 hours to finish everything. When he finished, he showed me how each lock worked. He gave me tips on security. He told me he had installed them very securely. I paid him the $200 in cash money I had saved for emergencies. And this was an emergency. The emergency of protecting what was mine. When he left, I locked the door. The new lock felt different, firmer, safer, more definitive. Michael no longer had keys to my house. Michael could no longer enter whenever he wanted. Michael no longer had access to anything of mine, and that felt like freedom. The following days were strange. It was like living in a parallel reality where everything looked the same but felt completely different. My house was the same. The same furniture, the same walls, the same windows, but the air inside was different, lighter, cleaner. As if by kicking Michael out, I had also removed years of invisible weight I had been carrying. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Calls from blocked numbers, messages from new numbers, all saying the same thing with different words. That I had misunderstood. That Michael only wanted the best for me. That the trailer was really a good option. That I was being selfish. That I was a bad mother. That I was going to regret it. I deleted every message without reading more than the first few lines. I rejected every call without answering. I blocked every new number that appeared, and with every block I felt I was recovering a piece more of my peace. Susan came the next day as she had promised. She arrived with a folder full of documents and a determination that reminded me why we were friends. She sat with me at the dining table, and we reviewed every paper. The deed to the house, the payment receipts. Everything was in order. Everything was in my name, only in my name. This is important, Linda. Michael has no legal right to this house. You bought it before he was of legal age. It is completely in your name. There is nothing he can do legally to take it from you. And if he tries to say I am not mentally well, that I need care, he said he had spoken to a lawyer about that. Susan shook her head. For that, he would need medical evidence. He would need a doctor to certify that you cannot make your own decisions. And look at you. You work, you pay your bills, you maintain your house. You made the smart decision to record his conversation and defend yourself. There is no doctor who can say you are not in your right mind. But he tried. I planned to do it. Planning it and achieving it are two different things. And now you have proof of his intentions. If he tries anything, you can prove it is he who is acting with malice, not you. Those words gave me a security I didn't know I needed. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't exaggerating. I was protecting what was mine, and that was completely valid. Susan took another document out of her folder. Now this is a will template. You need to fill it out with a lawyer, but I want you to see the options. You can leave your house to whoever you want to, an organization to a friend. You can even specify that it be sold and the money donated. The important thing is that it is clear that Michael inherits nothing. I looked at the paper. Seeing those blank words waiting to be filled made everything real in a way it hadn't been until that moment. I was disinheriting my only son. I was cutting the last tie that bound us. The tie of the future, the tie of inheritance. The tie of blood turned into assets. Is it the right thing? Susan put her hand over mine. Her fingers were warm, firm, Linda. The right thing is to protect yourself. The right thing is to make sure no one abuses you, not even your son. Especially your son, because he knew exactly what he was doing to you and he did it anyway. Focus on you. She was right. She was always right. I know a good lawyer. He is not expensive. I can ask for an appointment for next week. We can go together. Thank you, Susan. She stayed with me all afternoon. We drank coffee. We talked about things that had nothing to do with Michael, about her children who lived in the city, about her work at the firm, about the soap operas we watched. It was normal. It was simple. It was what I needed. When she left, it was already getting dark. I locked the door with my new lock. I engaged the deadbolt, and I stood there in the silence of my house. It was a different silence than the one I had known before. It wasn't the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of peace, the silence of knowing that no one was going to enter without my permission, that no one was going to plan my exile in my own hallway, that no one was going to rob me while I cleaned my furniture with love. The days turned into weeks. I established a new routine. I got up early. I made my coffee. I sat in the garden to watch the sunrise, something I had never done because I was always rushing, always running, always working to give more to Michael. Now the time was mine. All the time was mine. I cleaned Michael's room. I took out his things, the few he had left. I put them in boxes. I stored them in the garage. I didn't throw them away because a small part of me still couldn't, but I took them out of my sight. I took them out of my daily space. I painted the room a soft yellow. It took me 3 days because my old hands couldn't work very fast. But I did it. Every stroke of the brush was therapeutic. Every layer of new paint covered the memories. It erased them. It turned them into something different. When I finished, the room was no longer Michael's room. It was just a room, a space, a possibility. Susan took me to the lawyer, a young man of about 40, who treated me with respect, with dignity. He listened to me. He reviewed my documents. He listened to the recording, and he looked at me with something I recognized as admiration. Miss Linda, you did exactly the right thing. You have all the evidence you need, and we are going to ensure your house is fully protected. We made the will. I specified that the house be sold after my death and the money donated to an organization that helped older women in abusive situations. It seemed appropriate to turn my pain into help for others, to turn my house into protection for those who didn't have the luck to record everything. The lawyer charged me $300. It was more than I wanted to spend, but it was necessary. It was my protection, my security, my last word. Michael tried to come once. 2 weeks after kicking him out, he arrived on a Saturday morning. He rang the doorbell. I was in the kitchen making breakfast. I heard the bell, but I didn't move. He rang again, then again. Then he started knocking on the door with his knuckles. "Mom, I know you are there. Please let me in. I need to talk to you." His voice sounded desperate, but I had learned not to trust tones of voice. I had learned that desperation could be real, and yet intentions could still be bad. I stayed still, quiet waiting. "Mom, please. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Just let me explain." Explain what? How he had planned to rob me. How he had calculated exactly how much of my pension he could take from me. How he had consulted with a lawyer to declare me incompetent. There was no explanation that could erase that. He waited out there for 20 minutes, knocking, calling, pleading. I continued making my breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee. I ate at the dining table, listening to how his voice cracked on the other side of the door, and I felt nothing. No pity, no guilt, no impulse to open. I only felt the firmness of knowing I was doing the right thing. Finally, he left. I heard his car engine fading away. I heard the silence return, and I continued eating my breakfast in peace. That afternoon, I found an envelope he had slid under the door. I picked it up. Inside was a handwritten letter. Michael's handwriting that I had known since he learned to write. I read it once, only once. "Mom, I know I made a terrible mistake. I know I hurt you. I know I have no excuse. But you need to understand that I only wanted the best for you. The country really has good air. It is quiet. I thought you would like it. Ashley and I only wanted to help. It was never our intention to rob you. The house is yours. It has always been yours. We just thought it would be better for everyone if we moved here and you to a place more appropriate for your age. Please forgive me. You are my mother. I love you. I can't lose you." I read every word, every carefully constructed lie, every attempt at manipulation wrapped in fake concern, every phrase designed to make me feel guilty, to make me doubt, to make me open the door and forgive everything as I had always done. I folded the letter. I went to the kitchen. I took a lighter from the drawer. I turned on the stove burner and I burned the letter. I watched the words twist and turn black, how the paper was consumed, how everything turned to ashes. I threw the ashes in the trash can. I washed my hands and I went on with my day. The neighbors started noticing that Michael no longer came. Some asked. I responded with vagueness. He is busy with work. He has many responsibilities. You know how it is. No one pressed further. The townspeople understood that there were things that were not spoken of. But Mr. Stevens, the next-door neighbor, a widower of 70, did ask directly one afternoon when he saw me in the garden, "Linda, is everything okay? I haven't seen Michael in weeks." I looked at him. Mr. Stevens had always been kind to me. He had been a good neighbor. He deserved something more than Vegas. My son tried to steal my house. Mr. Stevens, he tried to send me to a shack to keep everything. I found out and kicked him out. His eyes widened. Then his expression softened into something that looked like understanding mixed with sadness. "I am sorry, Linda. That is terrible. But you did well to defend yourself. No one has the right to take what is yours, not even a son. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. And if you need anything at all, I am right here next door. You are not alone." Those words, so simple, so honest, made me feel more accompanied than 30 years of having a son. 3 months passed. 3 months in which my life settled into a new normal I never imagined possible. A normal where I was the center, where my decisions mattered, where no one planned my future behind my back. The lawyer finalized all legal procedures. The will was ready, signed, sealed, stored in his office with copies in my house. Michael would inherit nothing, and that no longer hurt me. It no longer produced that stab of guilt I felt the first weeks. Now it was just a fact, a documented reality that gave me peace. Susan continued visiting me every week. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she just came to drink coffee and talk. She had become something more than a friend. She was my witness. The person who knew my whole story and didn't judge me. The person who reminded me I had done the right thing every time doubt tried to slip into my head. One day she told me something that stayed engraved in my mind. "You know what I admire most about you, Linda? That after so long living for others, you finally learn to live for yourself. That is brave. That is beautiful." I had lived 64 years without understanding what it meant to live for me. It had always been living for my husband, for Michael to meet expectations, to sacrifice myself, to be the good woman, the good mother, the one who never complains. Now I was learning little by little, day by day. I started doing small things I had never allowed myself. I bought fresh flowers for the dining table every week. They cost $8, but they made me happy. I sat in my garden in the afternoons just to watch the sky. I ate when I was hungry without waiting for anyone. I watched the Hallmark movies I liked without feeling I was wasting time. Small things insignificant to anyone. Revolutionary for me. Mr. Stevens became an unexpected friend. Sometimes he knocked on my door with a plate of food he had made too much of. Sometimes he asked for help fixing something in his house just as an excuse to chat. There was no romance. There were no intentions beyond friendship. Just two older people who had lived enough to understand the value of uncomplicated company. One afternoon, he told me his story. How his wife had died 5 years ago. How his children lived in other states and barely visited him. How he also knew the loneliness of being the parent who gave everything and received little. It is funny, Linda. One spends one's whole life raising children, thinking they will be there at the end, that they will take care of you as you took care of them. But life doesn't work like that. Children grow up and make their lives, and one has to learn to be okay with that, to be okay alone. But we are not completely alone. We have ourselves, and that has to be enough. He nodded, he smiled, and we toasted with our coffee mugs as if we were celebrating something important. Maybe we were. Maybe we were celebrating having survived, having learned, having found peace in the stage of life where others only found bitterness. The money I used to spend visiting Michael or sending him things I now used on myself. I bought new clothes, not secondhand new from the store. I spent $120 on 3 blouses and 2 pairs of pants that fit me well and made me feel dignified. I got a haircut at a real salon for the first time in years. $30 that made me feel like a person who mattered. I hired someone to fix the leaks in the roof I had been ignoring because I didn't have extra money. $200 well spent on maintaining my house in good condition. My house, my investment, my future. Every expense was a statement. I matter. My comfort matters. My happiness matters. Michael tried to contact me 2 more times in those 3 months. Once through a new number sending me a long message about how Ashley was pregnant and how I was going to be a grandmother and how that should make me forgive him. I blocked the number without answering. Another time he appeared at the church door one Sunday. I was leaving Mass when I saw him standing there. He looked thinner, more tired, as if the last months had also taken a toll on him. He took a step toward me. I took a step back. My message was clear without the need for words. He stopped. He opened his mouth. He closed it. And finally, he walked away without trying to speak to me. That night, I felt strange. Not exactly sad, not regretful, just aware that that scene on the church steps might be the last time I would see my son. That maybe that was my goodbye. Silent, definitive, without words. And it was okay. It had to be okay because the alternative was allowing him back into my life just to hurt me again, and I was no longer willing to be hurt. One afternoon, I was sitting in my garden when Mr. Stevens called me from his fence. "Linda, I have something to tell you." I crossed into his garden. I sat on his old wooden bench. He offered me lemonade. I accepted. "I saw your son a few days ago. He was with his wife downtown. They looked well. They didn't look good. She was arguing with him right in the street. Something about money, about an apartment they can no longer afford. Something inside me tensed, but it wasn't worry. It was something more complex. It was confirmation that Michael had lost more than just his plan to steal my house. He had lost his stability. I didn't want to tell you, but I thought you should know. In case he tries to come again, in case he tries to manipulate you with money problems. Thank you for telling me, Mr. Stevens. But even if he comes, I won't help him. Not anymore. He made his decisions. Now he has to live with the consequences." "Well said, Linda. Well said." We drank our lemonade in silence, a comfortable silence, a silence that didn't need to be filled with unnecessary words. That night, I went to bed early. My body was no longer young. The days tired me faster than before. But it was a good tiredness. A tiredness earned doing things for me, not for others. Before sleeping, I thought about everything that had happened, about the woman I was 3 months ago. That woman who polished her furniture with hope, waiting for her son to value her. That woman who would have accepted going to the trailer just to avoid conflict. That woman who lived to please. That woman no longer existed. She had died the day I pressed the record button on my phone. She had died. And in her place, someone new was born. Someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. And even though the path had hurt, even though I had lost my only son in the process, I didn't regret it. I couldn't regret it because for the first time in my life, I was truly living, not surviving, not sacrificing, living. I fell asleep that night with a small smile on my lips, with the certainty that my house was mine, that my life was mine, that my future, however short it might be, belonged completely to me, and that was more than I had had in 64 years. Months later, when everything was already in order, when my life had found its rhythm, when I hardly thought about Michael except as a closed chapter of my story, I received the final confirmation that I had made the right decision. But that would come later in a chance encounter that would close everything definitively. An encounter that would show me exactly what the son I raised had become. An encounter that would let me sleep every night without a single shadow of regret. 6 months after kicking Michael out of my house, life had given me something I never thought I would have at 64. True peace. Not the fake peace that comes from ignoring problems, not the temporary peace that comes from avoiding conflicts. Real peace. Profound. The peace of knowing that your life belongs completely to you. I had found a part-time job at the town bookstore. I didn't need it desperately. My Social Security covered my basic expenses, but I wanted to be busy. I wanted to have a purpose that wasn't just existing. The owner was a kind man who valued my life experience. He paid me $10 an hour. I worked 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, $200 a week that I spent on things that made me happy, books, plants for my garden, occasional outings to eat with Susan, small luxuries that before I would have denied myself thinking it was selfish to spend on myself. My house had transformed. It was no longer just the place where I lived. It was my sanctuary. I had painted the living room a soft cream color. I had bought new cushions for the sofa. I had hung curtains that let the morning light in beautifully. Every change was small. Every change cost little, but together they had turned my house into something that was completely mine. Mr. Stevens had started coming to dinner on Sundays. We took turns cooking. He made a delicious chicken and rice. I prepared my specialty beef stew. We ate. We chatted. We watched some old movie on my small TV. It wasn't romance. It was something better. It was genuine company. It was friendship in its purest form. Susan had been promoted at the firm. Now she was a senior assistant and earned better. She invited me to dinner to celebrate. We went to a modest but nice restaurant. We spent $40 between the two of us. And while we ate and laughed, I realized something important. This was my family now. Susan, Mr. Stevens, the regular customers at the bookstore who greeted me by name, the neighbor who brought me tamale every month. This was my chosen family, not the blood family that had betrayed me, but the family I chose, and who chose me back. It was a common Tuesday when I saw him. I had left the bookstore early because we had little traffic. I decided to stop by the market to buy fresh vegetables for dinner. I was choosing tomatoes when I heard it. That voice I had known since he was born. That voice that had called me Mom for the first time. That voice that had planned my exile with such coldness. Michael was on the other side of the aisle. He hadn't seen me yet. He was arguing with Ashley in a low voice but loud enough for me to hear snippets. "We don't have money for that, Ashley. I already told you. We'll get it. I don't know how, but get it. The baby needs things. I need things. I can't keep living like this. The baby." So it was true. Ashley was pregnant. They were going to be parents. And by the tension in their voices, they were not prepared either emotionally or financially. I stood still behind the pile of tomatoes, observing them, studying them. Michael looked bad. He had lost weight. He had deep circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled. His posture was that of a defeated man. Ashley didn't look any better. Her hair was unkempt. Her clothes were cheap. Her belly barely showed the pregnancy, and her expression was pure frustration and bitterness. If your mother hadn't been so selfish, we would be living in that house. We would have space. We would have money saved. But no, she preferred to keep everything. Those words calling me selfish for not letting myself be robbed. Calling me selfish for defending what was mine. Calling me selfish for not allowing them to send me to a shack. I felt something, but it wasn't anger, it wasn't pain, it was something strange. It was pity mixed with relief. Pity for that baby who was going to be born into that toxic dynamic. Relief at having escaped being part of that disaster. Michael sighed. Stop talking about my mother. She did what she had to do. We screwed up. I screwed up. And now we have to live with that. Oh, now you defend her. After everything we did to get that house, we didn't do anything, Ashley. We planned to rob my mother. That is what we did. And she discovered us. It is over. We lost. Let's move on. Ashley looked at him with contempt. That contempt that had probably always been there. But Michael had been too blind to see. You are useless. Your mother is right not to want you in her life. Those words hit him visibly. Michael lowered his head. He didn't answer. He just pushed the shopping cart forward in silence. And it was in that moment that I decided it was time. Time to close this chapter completely. Time to have the last encounter. Time to prove to myself that I had truly healed. I walked toward them, my steps firm, my head held high, my cart with my fresh tomatoes and my vegetables. Michael saw me first. His eyes widened. The color left his face. He froze like a deer in headlights. Hello, Michael. My voice came out calm, without trembling, without unnecessary emotion, just a simple greeting between two strangers who once knew each other. Mom. His voice cracked. Ashley looked at me with a mixture of surprise and barely contained rage. I see you are going to be parents. Congratulations. The words were genuine. There was no sarcasm. There was no revenge. It was just a fact. They were going to have a baby. That deserved a basic acknowledgement of courtesy. Thank you. Michael didn't know what else to say. The three of us stood there in the middle of the market aisle in an uncomfortable silence. Ashley broke the silence with poison in every word. I guess you are happy. You left us with nothing. Your own son, your grandchild, with nothing. I looked her directly in the eyes, and I responded with a calmness that surprised even myself. I didn't leave you with nothing, Ashley. You tried to rob me, and I defended myself. There is a difference, a very big one. You are selfish. A selfish old woman who prefers to live alone in a big house than help her family. Michael put a hand on Ashley's arm. Enough, Ashley. Don't continue. But she ignored him. She kept talking with that rage she had probably been feeding for months. You know what? I am glad Michael kicked you out of our lives. We don't need you. We don't need your house. We don't need anything from you. Focus on you. Her words didn't touch me. They didn't hurt me. They were just noise. Desperate noise from someone who had lost and didn't know how to handle it. I'm glad you don't need me because I don't need you either. I turned around. I started walking away with my cart. But before leaving completely, I stopped. I turned one last time and I looked at Michael. Only at Michael. He looked at me with those eyes full of regret, with that lost boy expression that maybe hoped I would return to being the mother who forgave everything, who rescued him from his mistakes, who saved him from the consequences of his actions. But that mother no longer existed. I hope you are a better father than you were a son, Michael. That baby deserves more than what you gave me. And then I left. I walked to the register. I paid for my vegetables. I left the market. I got into my old but functional car, and I drove back to my house, my sanctuary, my peace. When I arrived, Mr. Stevens was watering his garden. He waved at me. I waved back. I went in. I locked the door with my new lock. I put my vegetables in the refrigerator, and I sat on my sofa. The same sofa where I had sat the day I kicked Michael out. The same sofa that had witnessed my transformation. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel regret. I only felt a deep and absolute peace. The peace of knowing I had done the right thing. The peace of having chosen my dignity over guilt. The peace of having finally understood that loving does not mean letting yourself be destroyed. That night, I ate alone. I made a simple soup. I poured myself a small glass of wine I had bought the week before. I sat in my dining room with my bowl, with my glass, with my piece. And I thought about the whole journey, about the woman I was, about the woman I am now, about how sometimes life breaks us so we can rebuild ourselves stronger. Michael would go on with his life. He would have his baby. He would face his problems. He would learn or not learn from his mistakes. But it was no longer my responsibility. It was no longer my burden. It was no longer my pain. I would also go on with my life in my house, with my job, with my chosen friends, with my garden that bloomed every spring, with my books, with my quiet afternoons, with my freedom won by blows of courage. I washed my bowl. I turned off the lights. I went to sleep in my bed, in my room, in my house that no one would ever take from me. And for the first time in 64 years, I closed my eyes knowing with absolute certainty that my life was completely mine, that I had recovered not only my house but something much more valuable. I had recovered myself, and that finally was enough.